I'm really excited to introduce our keynote speaker for this session today, Dr. Kristie Patten. And she is our newest inductee into the Academy of Research, AOTF Academy of Research. And that's the highest research award that AOTF bestows upon people doing their occupational therapy research. So we have some people in the academy that are not occupational therapists, but I'm just really proud of Kristie for being part of the academy now. She's professor and counselor to the president at the New York University at New York City. She oversees the strategic priorities of the Office of the President. She's also a professor in occupational therapy at NYU Steinhardt, and her research examines strength-based practices in inclusive public schools. She's been funded by the National Science Foundation and by PCORI, and she's just a real advocate for people with disabilities, and I'm just really excited to listen to her talk today about authentic strength-based anti-ableist research to enhance OT research and practice. And when we finish today, you're going to grab your lunches and go to the Eleanor Clark Slagle lecture. Well, Dr. Patten actually delivered the Eleanor Clark Slagle lecture in 2022, which is also one of the major awards that AOTA bestows upon researchers and distinguished occupational therapists. So I would like you to help me welcome Kristie to the podium.
Thank you. That was lovely. That was lovely. Thank you, Penny. Okay, being the last speaker when you've gotten up at God knows how early the last couple days, right before you have to go to the Slagle. This is my jam, is to make sure we have enough energy to get through this, okay? I bet you're ready to go back to your university so you can actually sleep in a little bit. I've looked at your schedule. It's a lot. I am thrilled to be here. I love talking to young scientists and young researchers because hopefully you can benefit from the things that I didn't do and I didn't do well. Because I really feel when I look back at my career, for the induction into the Academy of Research, you have to do your life as a researcher and your trajectory. And wow, if I would have known then what I know now. So hopefully some of the things that I talk about today will sit with you, will resonate, and will influence and inform your own research and your own practice. So I'm really looking forward to spending the next, I think I have 35 minutes. Okay, so I can start by saying, do everything that last panel talked about, and you're on the right track. As a research career. You know, the idea of community engaged approaches where you really coordinate with communities in profound ways. I didn't do that at the beginning of my research career. That's the only thing I do now. Okay? We know that there's a lot of problems in how we frame research. You know, I've listed a couple of these here. I'll point out, I don't know what happened to my slides. Hopefully, I emailed them to Neil, so hopefully some of them are out of whack now. All right, we'll work on that. You've heard about research as an extractive process. That is from indigenous communities that started the literature and the scholarship about research as an extraction. And you're going to hear that over and over again. And I want you to remember that word, research as an extraction, because that's violent, right? You know, you're going in and you're extracting something from a community. And that really is something we don't want to perpetuate, but we continue to perpetuate. The deficit-focused framing, the epistemic injustice. What does that mean? It means not valuing the lived experience of that person, right? So how am I valuing the lived experience of this person? The low expectations we have for a lot of those that we serve. The tokenism in patient involvement, or the tokenism in research. Having one person with a disability on your advisory board that's not paid is a prime definition of tokenism. Okay? How are you centering and co-researching? I'm on a grant now, the PCORI grant that Patty described on centering autistic voices in behavioral interventions. We're doing this transformative and restorative justice practice around those that have been harmed by applied behavioral analysis having a chance to talk to ABA providers. It's a long process. It's going to take a long time to really feel like we're comfortable in community, but it's necessary. It's necessary. And on that grant, we have, there's 16 probably primary leadership team. 9 are autistic, 7 are non-autistic allies. Co-PIs are autistic. The council that advises them, we have 8 autistic individuals advising our leadership team. Everyone is paid. Everyone is paid and written into the grant. That to me is like, it's the highest level I've been involved in, and it really is truly different. It takes longer, like the panel said, and one of the things that universities need to do, and as my job and counsel to the president, I kind of can seed some of these things and do some of these things, is we're really working hard with the provost office to count community engaged research towards tenure in a very different way as far as productivity, understanding that it takes longer. You know, if you look at productivity for tenure reviews, it's like how many articles did you write in a year? How many research grants? These grants take longer. So how can we make sure that that's reflected when you're evaluated for tenure? Okay, so and really understanding those trade-offs. The last panel talked a lot about these, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I'm going to show you some examples from my Slagle that I tried to articulate. LM, Lauren Melissa, LM, she goes by, is a colleague of mine, has worked on our ASD Nest support project, which supports, it's called the Nest now, we got rid of ASD, that supports 91 schools in the New York City public schools that I'm PI of. And you know, when you listen, like the panel said, when you listen to the community, you will definitely start changing your research. You know, when I first got into where I was listening to a lot of autistic advocates, and I got a grant when I was at Temple University with Beth Pfeiffer a while ago. This I think was in early 2000s. It's really, we talked to autistic adults, and they told us 2 things. There was 2 things that if I was a qualitative research at the time, these would have been the only 2 themes. Turn off the fluorescent lighting, theme 1. It buzzes, it hurts, and stop with the eye contact. And at the time, if you think about early 2000s, there were vast amounts of funding going to improve eye contact for autistic individuals. So see how discordant that was with what the community was saying? There's still some, but I think most research have been shamed enough to stop that by the autistic advocates and the autistic researchers. And that's really listening to the community. Why no eye contact? One of the things they said was, listen, I can listen or look at you, you choose. We had one person say, the human face, not yours, the human face is a horror, not yours, because of the sensory information. And then if you have a tongue piercing, then that glints, that really sparks. And so if I can listen to you if I'm not looking at you. Yet we had all this research, including with robots, trying to force eye contact. You know, what a disconnect by not listening to the community. LM, I read this every time I put it up here because I think it's so instructive to listen. To pause, listen to what we need from you, listen to what has hurt us. I've encountered practitioners who are overjoyed to see autistics behaving more like neurotypical peers. Is that truly something to celebrate? Is our goal to teach autistics to mask? And you may have heard about masking. Because autistics will always be autistic. This is the most important sentence of this quote. Each time I am praised for not being autistic, I learn that people like me when I'm not me. And we wonder why the rates of anxiety and depression are higher in the autistic population. Why is suicidal ideation higher in the autistic population? If you are living your life by having those around you say, be more like me, that's going to cause a lot of secondary effects. I would never ask someone that's visual impaired to see more like me. I would never ask a wheelchair user to walk more like me. But every day in clinics, in research studies, we're asking autistic and neurodivergent people to act more like me, whatever that neuronormative way is. Okay, see the difference? Okay, so we have a long way to go. And we have a long way to go until this changes. I'll accept if it were like half and half maybe. You know, if we move strengths up. You know, I've said time and time again, not one of you in this room has built your life on your remediated weaknesses. Yet we have a whole system of education, K through 12 special education, that focuses on weaknesses. Those are the IEP goals, right? We're trying in the New York City public schools, and we have a wonderful executive director of special education who's a bachelor's trained OT, so she gets it. We're working with her to see if every kid that has an IEP can have an aspirational goal as mandated as part of their IEP. What does an aspirational goal mean? Something that you're good at, that you want to do better, that will develop those skills that you're also working on. You know? But until the framing changes, until our reports, and a lot of professionals that work with individuals with disabilities, and you know, people say, well, I have to talk about their weaknesses, that's how I get paid. Sure you do. Talk about them as challenges, etc. But at least give more airtime. Because they're not going to build their lives on what they're not good at. They're going to build their lives just as you have on what you excel and what you want to move forward and strengthen. Okay? So we know the problems, but we still have a long way to go. I've talked about really shifting this to, instead of high and low functioning individuals, I don't use that term. It's a derogatory term. Low functioning individuals often implies that they are cognitively impaired, nonverbal. I use the word non-speaking. Many of our non-speaking individuals, two of the people on the grant that I described, one is a postdoc at Vanderbilt, is non-speaking. Low functioning, that's how you'd be classified if you use the term from an individual basis, low functioning and high functioning. So trying to shift this to an environment perspective. And until we do that, and we are the profession that can do this so well, can move away from this idea of individual impairments, individual high and low functioning, to what is the environment doing. And all it takes is a just reframe. Begin to reframe, think about your questions. And I wrote a couple down, or I wrote one down that I'll read, just so that you get the idea. You can do this with anything. Anything you're interested in, any area you're interested in, think about it from this perspective. So here's the old question. What voc rehab strategies, very much an OT realm, what voc rehab strategies improve employment rates for people with psychiatric disabilities? Good research question. Employment rates, it's good to be employed, right? That's saying what voc rehab strategies that individual does and can improve, will improve employment, versus what workplace conditions make employment meaningful and sustainable, key thing, sustainable, for people with psychiatric disabilities, and what would these workplaces need to look like to actually support retention, including flexibility, culturally, and structurally. See the difference? Yeah, someone's feeling me back there. I'm getting a point. Okay? So think about that in your own research questions and really look at, can you pivot to really think about in that PEO, that environment piece that we are so good at, can you magnify that? And shift the focus and shift the lens. And once we start shifting the lens, like some of our people up here were talking about with community engagement, to look at what is the environment providing, there are endless opportunities for us as OTs, both in the practice area and the research area. But the problems really still exist. We have been committed to taking, we have a grant with the NSF called Making Mentors, where we are traveling with our mentors. I have 4 of my mentors right now with my recent PhD student at INSAR in Prague right now, so I keep getting pictures from them. And when they talked about what is in it for your research participants, these are mentors that are part of our research project that are getting international travel, speaking in front of international groups, and really coming into their own as disability advocates themselves, and being seen as leaders in these spaces, and meeting the people that are their heroes. You know, Damian Milton, who has this double empathy theory that is an autistic-driven theory, was at the conference we took them to in Dublin, and they all got to meet him, and they were just like, we've read about you, you know, like, I don't know if there's any OTs that you look at that and go up to and go, oh, wow. But they're having opportunities that they wouldn't have had, and it's not an extraction at all. They are coming, we pay them, they get international travel, and they're co-creating our hypothesis, our aims, our research questions, everything. You know, and that's where, if you start thinking about that now, that's why I love talking to you. If you start thinking about that now, your research will be better. Imagine if I did 10 years of eye contact research. My research would suck and have no applicability and really not be presented and used anywhere. You know, and I've had a lot of people come up to me, do you want to be involved in the face recognition robot research for autism? I'm like, no. Because autistic individuals may not be able to recognize your emotions, but you as a non-autistic individual can't recognize the autistic emotion. So how about we train robots to recognize autistic emotions? I don't want you to do that either, that'd be stupid too. So, but how can we frame this in a way that is not feeding into the problems? Like I said, we know the problems. How can we move towards the solutions? Monique Bota is an incredible autistic researcher. I would highly recommend you read everything they write if you're interested in this. But they really frame it very clearly, that to be involved in autism research when you're autistic is to constantly experience the aggression of a field, which is yet to come to terms in its own ableism. I would like to kind of charge you to think about the same thing when you're reading OT research and really begin to think about some of the solutions that I'm going to talk about. So there's tons of things you can do. I'm just giving you a little bit of setup, kind of pre-doing the research. But if you're interested in having like a large compendium of these types of things to think about, feel free to email me. I can send you them. But I'm going to highlight a couple as we go through this. Conduct a who benefits audit before you even start. Okay, so before even setting your aims, list the concrete beneficiaries. You know, if the beneficiaries are your career, your institution, your future non-disabled clinicians, you're probably on the wrong path. How does it benefit, and redesign it until disabled individuals benefit directly? We already heard about engaging with the disability community. Ask if disabled people have already answered this question. This is really interesting. A lot of times you don't find it in the academic literature, you find it in what's called the gray literature, because that's where they've been doing their work. That's where they've been posting on blogs and in papers, in different types of media, that they may already have some really good answers that will really drive you. Get in touch with them. Invite them into your research. But you may not find it where you, but they've produced a lot of knowledge outside academia. And so remember that, research questions I already talked about. I think we've come a long way in autism for a variety of reasons, and a lot of the research that someone like Beth is doing, Amber, myself in the area of autism, and so many more, where we wouldn't think to answer what interventions reduce stimming in autism. I don't think there's not a lot of researchers in our field that would do that, because we've actually wrote a statement about it with Choosing Wisely that we shouldn't be stopping stimming behavior, and we really look at what functions does it serve, and what functions does it serve. I'm an author of a kind of controversial paper right now that was published in Autism Research as a commentary with my colleagues about non-speaking individuals, and really trying to understand typers and those that type independently. That's controversial because it's been said that we can't do some of these methods, not facilitated communication, but rapid prompting, spelling to type. And we're basically saying, we gotta know why these individuals are able to type independently, because they have been given a tool to communicate exactly what they're thinking independently. So can we study that? It's a call to research. It's a call to investigate. It's a call to open, because that's how they communicate. So wouldn't it behoove us to find out how they got to that level of independence? I can talk to you later about why it's controversial if you want to hear about that. Designing your team, recruit disabled co-investigators, clearly distinguish roles, pay we talked about, explicitly examine the team's power structure. Often the power resides in the non-disabled researchers, because they're typically the PIs, right? So if that's where the power is, how do you reset that power? How do you change that to make sure that you're very well aware of it? And when do you bring, how can you co-construct with the community members so that that power is redistributed? When you're designing the study, prioritize asset and capabilities frameworks. You know, lack of eye contact is the prime example of a deficit-based framework. Think about what someone can do. Think about what they're able to do and the conditions that support or hinder those abilities and capabilities. We really need to start understanding flourishing, and what are the conditions that help us flourish, versus what can't we do and why, and then let's work on shoe tying for 6 years in schools. Sorry, that was a little off-topic statement. Structurally embed the social model. You know, when you read research articles and you see someone refer to the social model of disability, and then nothing about their study is about the social model of disability, question that, critique that. Ask yourself why. Why are we talking about the social model of disability when their research study and everything related after they've mentioned the social model of disability goes directly into this reductionistic medical model for the rest of the study? Is it a lip service to this idea of a social model? Utilize disability studies as a true framework, and there's a lot of them out there, whether it's CRIP theory, MAD studies, neurodiversity paradigm. We use double empathy all the time. That's one of the foundational bases for my work that we're doing with NSF to generate hypotheses, shape methodology, and build these frameworks. So moving beyond just citing them in the literature. Really beginning to understand those. Outcome measures. Like I said, I have a lot of these. They only have 2 more slides, but they go into every aspect of the research process of what you can do to think about. Critique every measure before adopting any standardized assessment. Who was it done for? Was it a non-disabled group of individuals? Collaborate on development if existing measures don't work. We are doing a longitudinal study with our NEST and the quality of life measures. There's some being developed right now. They're just not developed yet, so we can't use them. But we are asking our recent grads of our autistic K through 12 program about their quality of life, and kind of they're designing these questions to parallel what's on the National Longitudinal Transition Study. And what you're finding, they may answer they'd never get invited to a friend's house, but when you delve deeper, their social needs are more than adequately fulfilled based on their terms. But they would always look bad on that outcome measure because we're comparing them. So really think about outcome measures. We already talked about aligning community priorities. Let me just go through this. And there's so much more. I think we try to audit every sentence in our papers we write. And we have a lot of autistic co-researchers that do this with us for deficit framing. And we change it. And we say, yes, that's not how we would say it. Or if we get interviewed and there's a news article or something that my university puts out and it's in deficit frame, I immediately call up and I'm like, I would never say that. You know, please change it now. And we basically counter the things that we see that represent our work that we don't feel accurately represent our work. Open access. When you're writing grants, does everyone know what open access is? It's what frustrates you when you can't get an article if it's not open access. We publish everything open access. That is expensive, depending upon the journal. We build that into our grant. We say we need $10,000 for open access. Okay, because we want the community to be able to have access to what we write. And we share it back with the community. Plain language summaries. We write plain language summaries. Present at disability community conferences. You know, the Autism Europe conference is one of the most disability-friendly autism conferences. If you haven't been there, it only happens every 3 years, I think. The next one's in Spain. You will go there and you will hear from more autistic presenters than non-autistic presenters. So I think it's in like Santander, Spain next. Give data back to participants and community and challenge the journal norms that encode ableism. And there's so much more. I want to shift a little bit and say, okay, those are some solutions. How are we doing? How are we doing as a profession? And because I had the honor of giving the Slagle now 4 years ago, and you're getting ready to go to the Slagle, I thought let me sandwich a little Slagleness in here. So I asked my friend Claude, and I want to be mindful of using AI, because I really feel that AI is used best when you have high domain knowledge versus when you have low domain knowledge. And by that I mean if you want to go to Italy and you are someone that is native from Italy and I ask AI to give me an itinerary, you probably wouldn't do anything that it recommends. If I've never been to Italy, I would probably do everything that it recommends. So high domain versus low domain knowledge is very important. I feel like I have high domain knowledge in this area because when I was awarded the Slagle, you're given a year to write it, I read every Slagle lecture. Everyone. To pull themes and everything. So I asked Claude about this anti-ableism and how are we doing? How are we doing in Slagle with anti-ableism? And Claude said that he read the Slagles sequentially. And we've moved from fix the body to support the whole person, to remove environmental barriers, to interrogate systems and biases, to center disabled people's autonomy and voices. And it said, cut this off, so I'll read you the ouch part. This is precisely the trajectory charted by broader disability studies scholarship, but lagging it by roughly a decade at each turn. So we were off by about a decade. So that would imply that we have some catching up to do, right? To really move into where disability studies, much less disability justice frameworks are. So we're lagging behind. We're lagging behind. And now this is my call to you, this next slide. Because you are the next frontier, right? Would you agree you're the next frontier of research? Yes, you are. Whether you know it or not, you're the next frontier of research. The intersection of race and disability, central to the disability justice framework developed by several, these names might be familiar to you, and others, remains only partially engaged even in the most recent lectures. Gutman in 2020, Patten in 2021, gesture towards structural inequality and intersectionality, right? Which is fair. I would say that's a fair assessment that I gestured towards it. A fully intersectional disability justice analysis that names how race, poverty, gender, and disability co-construct marginalization has not yet fully emerged as a Slagle level framework. That is likely the next frontier, my friends. How are you going to be a part of that? How are you going to begin to think about that in powerful ways? I have an activity, I put this picture up because in January 2007, I was at the first AOTA, AOTF Leadership Summit that was led by Wendy Koster and Eleanor Guilfoyle and Ann Grady. It was -5 degrees in Colorado in January, and we went. But one of the things that was very powerful is they ask us to kind of state what we wanted to do with our research career and state it out loud. And at that time, I think I had maybe $50,000 of internal funding, maybe one external grant, no federal, and I was not on a tenure track position, and I was like, so I stated out loud, well, I really want to be a researcher that has a lab, that gets federal grants. This was 2007, this was almost 20 years ago. But I stated it out loud. And there's a power to kind of stating something out loud like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn and talk to the person next to you. And you're going to think about, and you're going to share a research ambition that is really, really ambitious. Not, I'm going to write and finish this paper by next week when I graduate. That doesn't count. Be bold, be ambitious, turn and talk. And I share these pictures with you because we have this thing that I'm doing at NYU called NYU IRL. Google it. It's very cool. We have John Haidt of the Anxious Generation at NYU, and he's a part of it. We're putting our phones down. We're putting our devices away. We're talking to each other. We had a table set up on This is Washington Muse in New York City. 200 kids came and 49-degree weather to eat outside without their phones, and they didn't leave for 3 hours. Your generation is leading the way, and younger generations are leading the way to say, we have gone astray with not turning and talking to each other and being connected. So with the time we have left, you're going to turn to a partner, or if there's three of you, and really say, and again, they don't have to be fully formed, but how will your work inform this next frontier? And go.
I think the graduate show, Kristie, take it away, lead us.
Good. Let me take it off. I'm just going to ask a question.
I would say, personally, whether that's a legislature, whether that's a policy, whether it's whatever the intention is, not for now, maybe later, but I know I want to have change process not sitting at the top. Like, I've got my PhD now.
Nothing is too crazy. Okay, so we got finish up in a minute. If you haven't told your big idea, make sure you verbalize it to somebody. Okay, I'm going to bring you back together. I hope that you keep talking about these big ideas to each other, especially if you didn't get a chance to share yours. And I'm going to ask, this picture right here are our NYU students. We did a takeoff of, this is called No Friends versus Friends. This is in the central perk that we made at our university. It's a whole video. I would encourage you to go watch it. These students are great. Because we really felt that we need more of this in every day. What we're doing here at conference, you should be turning and talking to each other more and more, because you will generate those ideas, you will generate that support, you will make connections. Does anyone want to share someone else's big idea that they heard? Not your own, but something that you heard from someone you were sitting with, you're like, well, she's got it, or he's got it, or they have a big idea.
Layla wants to create a model to support families and children with autism, and I'm really excited to one day present that model and be like, yeah, I knew her, we talked about it the day after, she thought of it.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Share.
So Ashley actually works in a lab, doing a lot of brain interfacing with AI, working with a lot of neuro conditions, but she also wants to look at how people's mental health is impacted by lack of accessibility in general. And we see a lot through the biomedical model. So pretty cool stuff.
Nice. Anybody else?
I'm Tina.
Tina, thanks.
So Crystal, and we all share the same, we all speak Spanish, so we will discuss everything in Spanish.
I love that.
So she said that she loved the conceptualization of bringing more occupational therapy to Puerto Rico, because there's not many therapists and not many help as Nicaragua and in our culture.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, anyone else?
Kelly was talking about research in gender coming here. More so the trans aspect of it, but also for an individual that has a vasectomy.
Just an example.
Yeah, referrals for OT with regards to the mental health side of things, because that's something that they have to deal with from a physical standpoint and the role reversal or how they're feeling for themselves.
Is everyone picking up the intersectionality of what you're talking about, which I said was the next frontier? Like, that's not a Slagle level framework. Did anyone say, I'm going to do a Slagle on my research? You weren't thinking big enough. Someone thought of it. Who thought of it? Think big. Think big. Think about what you think your research team would look like. Think about where you would want your research to sit. What type of institution? Clinic-based, academia, think tank. Think big. You're allowed to, but you have to say it out loud. The research you're talking about is wonderful because it hits that intersectionality, right? But where's it going to go? Where's it going to be placed? And how are you going to get there? Did anyone think about getting funding? Was anyone thinking about funding? What were you thinking about with funding?
But it's going to be very complicated.
It's going to be very complicated, especially in some of these areas right now. Let's give it a couple years. But you thought that it would be very complicated.
I think also just thinking of the level of funding that would be needed to do the type of
research that I want to do, since it's like community-based and mostly like based internationally. It would only, like, I wouldn't have to convince people that my work is important, but also probably like organizations in the U.S. to care about another country. So it's like harder.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and there's some uphill things here, but if you have a lot of us in this research community, no matter what our research is, started. My first grant was $400. $400. My next grant was $900, and I felt like I had done a great job. Right? So just start. Look for those things. The internal funding. You know, what you're talking about, if you're at an institution, we'll get probably some internal funding, right? Just start. But I just want to say, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you this morning, to listen to your ideas. I'm going to encourage you to think bigger. I'm going to encourage you to think about how is my research and my agenda matching this idea of anti-ableism? How is it matching the disability frameworks? Whether it's disability studies, disability justice, and how am I moving that part of this work forward? So thank you very much.
So let's thank Kristie.